Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. Let me start out this morning. It's Veterans Day in the U.S. by saying to everybody who served, thank you. We answer your questions on media and tech-related issues every single day right here, and we're going to do exactly that right now. Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, is our reader today. Alexander, what do we got?
First question this morning is coming in from Andre Dolay in Berlin. One of our government customers, a good prompter for live events. Recommendations for a good presidential prompter.
And I'm sure we'll get a bunch. Courtney Gooden's going to start us off here this morning. Courtney?
Well, if it is the government, be prepared to spend some money. You know, our hard taxpayer money can go into that. Prompter people make a pretty good presidential prompter, and they make these auto steppers that automatically rise. So they have this little robotic arm that can raise it and lower it, so it can automatically adjust itself for height during a presentation. But it is kind of pricey at $10,000. What was it? $10,000, $1,200, $10,124. Also, a company that I have a lot of their teleprompting equipment is Telescript. They make this nice system for $12,000, even more money, $12,495. It is not automatically leveling, but it does come with two of them and a rolling case. For that price, you can find them cheaper. Prompter people make some that are not leveling for considerably cheaper, about half those prices. So be prepared to lay out some money for presidential style prompters. Although they're pretty simple, they're just a monitor that reverses and a piece of glass with that's 70-30 or 60-40 reflective. So on a monopod, I made my own.
Jason Bass, your thoughts?
Yeah, for those who don't know, what differentiates a presidential prompter from every other teleprompter you've seen is that the monitors are on the floor and they're designed to be as invisible as possible. I, too, think that prompter people is the winner here. And yes, you can spend $12,000 or you can spend $700. I'd say right in the middle is about $3,000, and these are the only ones that I've ever used and needed to use. They're fantastic. They're well assembled. They don't have the robotic thing. That's $10,000, but the glass is suspended by kind of like a mic stand, and you just kind of tighten it. So that's my vote.
Alex Lindsay.
The only ones I've seen in the wild for this type of thing are prompter people. So I know that there's other ones out there, but I've worked on a fair number of presidential events, and those are the only ones I've ever seen in the wild.
So it may be that the president uses the presidential prompter from prompter people.
I haven't seen all the ones the president has used, or the different presidents have used, but all the ones that I've seen have been prompter people ones.
Fair enough. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida asks, thoughts on the new Hollyland Lyra webcam with 1/1.5-inch CMOS?
Alex Lindsay's going to start us off here. Alex?
I think it doesn't look too bad. I still wouldn't get it. I mean, maybe I'd send it out to somebody, but I think that I don't. It's got, a lot of things that I don't care about. I don't, the tracking maybe, but usually the tracking has too much headroom. That's usually what happens with auto tracking with everybody. Intelligent noise cancellation, I doubt is as good. I doubt I'd use their mic. Direct mic connection, I doubt I'd use that. And maybe, so for someone getting started and they want to throw something in, or they're a gamer, maybe it works. I think that love to see somebody go to at least a 1-inch, if not a Super 35 sensor, APS size sensor for a webcam. I think that they would sell as many as they could make, just because I think that would really make a huge difference. But so I think that everyone, obviously can't figure out how to do that cost effectively. But I think that there's a market. I think it would have to be safely under the Sony EV or Z10, I can't ever keep track of their letters, but the ZV or ZV-E10 2, which is about $800. With the lens, it's going to be $1,100. So there's this world below that if you were able to do a Super 35 sensor with a reasonably good aperture, I think it's $600, $700 for a webcam. I think a lot of people would buy that, but you really have to get to a Super 35 sensor to make that work.
Courtney Gooden, your thoughts?
Yeah, I just took a quick look at it. It does pan, but I don't think it tilts. So if it's tracking you, it can track you left and right. But if you come toward the camera, it'll change focus. It does autofocus, but I don't think it can tilt up to keep your head in the shot. So unless it does it with a super wide lens and digital, pan and tilt on the sensor itself, or at least digital tilt. So that remains to be seen whether it's a 4K sensor that they're pulling a 1080p cut out of the middle of it and just doing a digital pan and tilt. Would be interesting. But I thought it actually pans, but maybe not. Maybe it just does a digital pan.
Andy, thank you for the question. Next question.
David Birdie in New York City, New York asks, it's a race against time. Take a tour through Disney's Sound Vault, and there's a link to YouTube there.
Oh, this looks intriguing. Alex, did you explore?
This looks great. So I haven't gotten to see it yet. Thank you, David, for giving me something that I'll have to watch relatively soon, probably after the show. But here is just a breakdown of all the Sony Vault. Look at that. All the different ways of digitizing. This looks like a fantastic tour. So looking forward to doing more with that in the future.
Is that their oven for baking the tapes?
Yeah,
baking recipe on screen.
I wonder if they can make brownies in it as well.
Dual purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
In the morning, Disney Archives. In the afternoon, flan.
Yeah, exactly.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, if you leave the tape in long enough, it turns into brownies.
Ouch.
Yeah, I stumbled across this video last night, and I watched the whole thing. It's very interesting. This is just the archives for Disney parks. So this is just the attractions. This is all the audio elements for all the parks. And they started back with 35 millimeter 3-track film, mag film. And they had to transfer those assets, and they have this great machine room where they have all these different types of machines because they have to play back and to archive this media from the last 30 years or 40, 50 years. So, a lot of the stuff is originally on 1/4-inch tape, then they went to dash digital, and then they went to the 3M, and none of these machines are used anymore, especially the digital formats. So they have to transfer those to Pro Tools files, and now they're burning things onto Blu-rays as data files, Pro Tools data sessions. And that was that drawer that they showed where they had all those discs. Those are all Blu-ray copies. And those portable things there on the right, they take them to the actual parks when they archive something, and they can then update all the hardware at the individual parks. So they're portable fly packs that they take so that they can reinstall and archive and back up all the stuff. That's their machine room there. And you can see the 35 millimeter dubber in the back that does 6-track 35 millimeter, and the Atari there in the foreground. I think it's a dash format machine. Yeah, it's very interesting. And if you have a chance to see it, it's good to see on what's necessary just to keep things as the formats change over the years. Things become obsolete, and if you can't play them back anymore, hey, too bad.
Please tell me there's a fluorescent warning label on the soundtrack for It's a Small World ride.
They talk about redoing the It's a Small World. He talks about remixing it. And it was originally in mono, and they remixed it into 3-track, into stereo. They went back and they found the original orchestra recordings.
That's scary.
3-track orchestra recording. But I was tasked once with doing something for Disney for the parks, and I had to go to the park and record the outside It's a Small World. And so I had a Nagra and 30 minutes of tape, and so I'm rolling. I said, well, I'll record the loop. It never changes. I recorded like an hour and a half.
Forever.
Because it announces the hour every 15 minutes. The clock outside does a little thing. And it's the world's longest loop. I never knew when it was over because it just keeps repeating, and it's seamless.
Alex Lindsay, your thoughts?
All I have to say is it's so much fun when you interact with Disney. I think Courtney kind of underlined it. When you work I've done a couple things at Disney parks and then done other things. And the absurdity of the overdoing of everything, anything that's worth doing is worth overdoing. And Disney lives by that mantra. There's just so many things that you realize they've just thought about. Like every time there's a random like musical that happens somewhere in Disneyland, that's crowd control. They're slowing down the flow of people through the system. There are so many things that they've designed. It's just a very fascinating place to interact with. It's amazing.
David, thank you for the question. Next question.
This one is one of my questions. Streaming providers have started cracking down on sharing accounts outside of the same household. Many families do this to save money. Obviously horrible for the bottom line of these companies. Have you had to reevaluate where your money goes to?
Chris Fenwick's going to weigh in on this first. Chris?
I love the fact that we complain when people want to get paid for what they're selling. It's kind of silly. Trish and I have two homes, one in the Bay Area, one in Sacramento. Between, and Netflix has cracked down. I can't leave the account active in both locations, but basically what happens is when I get back to the other house, first world problem, I apologize. When I get back to the other house, I just have to tickle it with my phone or something. I can't remember the exact process, but I can use it in both locations. I can't just use it, but I can't use it in both locations at the same time.
So there's a lockout for two copies running simultaneously, but for not copying the copy and moving
that's what it appears,
else.
At least with the Netflix. The other accounts don't seem to be quite so, controlled, but technically they're mine, but I'm not giving it to my nieces and nephews and grandparents and stuff like that.
Yeah. My son, when he moved out, took one of our accounts with him, but it lasted a couple of years, and then for some reason it fell away, so I don't really have that much experience. Alex Lindsay, though, does, and will talk to us next.
I think that they're trying to figure out the numbers, because the numbers aren't adding up to quite what they'd like to it. And part of it has to do with the fact that we've bisected the market so much because there's so many streamers out there. I don't think they're all going to survive. So I think that as it consolidates, the ones that are left will probably make more money. I think that Apple and Amazon will be around because they don't need to make money at it. This is kind of a Kaiser Sose model. They'll always make more money than the job is worth. So Apple and Amazon are kind of safe. Netflix is safe from scale. They're just the biggest game in town. Disney most likely is okay because of the their library. I think everybody else will get slowly absorbed by some of the other ones. They won't necessarily get absorbed by those ones, but they'll all slowly consolidate. And the reason for that is that I just don't think that they have they don't have the scale or the library to survive against those top four. And I think the problem that they have really is that Apple is distorting the market by paying everybody so much money to do shows. They don't do very many of them, but everybody in Hollywood wants to work for them. Because they're the best shows that run by adults. Things get done. No producer's yelling at you over budget. And things just get someone mentioned to me, well, this one show is $40 million over budget, and I'm like, and that's Apple's. That's how they win.
It's their business model.
That's the business model is people don't feel like they're getting hammered all the time by some producer, because Apple can afford to do that. On the other side, you're being squeezed by YouTube. The ecosystem that YouTube's building is just stunning, because of not people living in Malibu making millions and millions of dollars. It's people living in Nebraska making $250,000 a year, being able to do what they love and having an entire ecosystem built around them. The cameras, the stabilizers, the drones, the everything else. If you talk to someone at B&H, they care very little about the broadcasters and care a lot about creators, because creators is a much larger part of that pyramid. And so I think that being squeezed between someone who's willing to pay whatever it takes to do a good job and millions of people that are willing to do it for $250,000 a year, the market in between is going to continue to become less and less forgiving. And I think that if you don't have a built-in process, you're going to, people like me, I've already quit most of them, because I just looked at what do I actually watch? I don't watch a lot of these. I watch Apple shows and I watch YouTube, and every once in a while my wife watches some Netflix. The only reason we have Netflix is because my wife watches some shows there.
Jesse Kester, your thoughts.
I'm going to ask you to pull back a little bit on the verbiage. Obviously horrible for the bottom line. I think there's a really simple model that you can examine. There are this many people watching, and we could be making this much money if all of these people were spending this much money on that subscription. But that doesn't account for things like conversation, synergy, ranking in global interest on social media platforms. And stuff like this does damage to the ephemeral stuff, the synergy that's a result of a lot of people talking about a thing and being really excited about the same thing and all tuning in at the same time to engage with a platform. And that's so much harder to quantify than this number of people are on the platform and paying this much money. So I'm not sure it's obviously horrible what's happening. It's obviously horrible if you take a really, really, really simple model to examine revenue.
Jason Bache, your thoughts.
Yeah, and if this annoys you, this bugged me to death for the first 6 months when once a month I would go to Stanford to visit my fiance, and my fix has been just bring the Apple TV, and then Disney Plus doesn't ask me to reactivate. As long as you take the device and move it geographically, I found that it doesn't actually bug and ask to log back in for whatever reason.
Yeah, the thing that's been interesting to me is the absorption thing. I cut off about 50% of my subscriptions when I stopped producing for a particular outlet where I needed to watch all the cable channels to check on quality control, and I couldn't justify deducting it anymore, so I just dropped about half of them. I have about half of that body, so 25% of them are now back, but I haven't subscribed to them. They've just been folded into other things, like suddenly my Spectrum account saying, well, now you get access to Paramount Plus, and I'm not paying for it. It's just coming in. I don't know how their model works for that, but it's just interesting how there's so much churn and bundling that even things I got rid of have come back, and I don't think I'm paying any extra for. I'm sure it'll eventually reflect in the cost of my Spectrum account going up a little bit, but it's just a weird landscape out there. I don't even know what happened to Hulu. I know they got absorbed by Disney, but I don't even know if it's a thing anymore. So the market is confused and confusing, and I think it's going to take a while to settle out. Next question.
This one is coming in from Andre Dole in Berlin. What is your preferred brand of SDI cables up to 10 meters, flexible and durable?
Jason Bache, dive in.
So I have one set of cables that has truly, knock on wood, never failed, and it is let's see, this is the Belden, what is it? Yeah, Belden 12 gigahertz UHD precision video cable, and it works pretty well.
There you go, Alex Lindsay. Your thoughts?
We usually order these in hundreds of feet, usually 500 to 1,000 feet at a time, without any termination. So we terminate them ourselves. And so what we generally buy is this Clark cable. This is a CD7523 UHD, so 12 gigahertz, 8K miniature. And this is 23 gauge. So it's pretty thin. A lot of it has to do for us with weight. But you can see what the attenuation is over distance. We find that 12. We never run. So if you look at this here, down here, this 12 gigahertz is up to 149 feet, and because I never run over 150 feet with SDI ever, I do okay. With 4K with these. These are usually combined with the Neutrik rear twist connectors. And those together have been, for the last decade, have been what we've used for what we do.
Courtney Gooden, your thoughts?
I've been to a number, and for bulk cable, I like the Belden flexible 12 gigahertz cables. Also, the Mogami cables are good, and Canary, if I want colored cables, color-coded cables. Canary makes a good brand of color-coded cables. Now, for custom-made cables, if I'm not making my own, I'd go to Packrad, which is Pacific Radio, and they have this division called No Shorts Cable Company, and they will custom make cables of any length and any type of termination, and you can choose from, Belden or Canary or Neutrik connectors, King's connectors, a variety of the different types of terminations on either end, and they will make them any length. And I bought several of the very skinny high-speed cables from them for, short cables for doing interconnects inside of a case, because it's great because you don't want this massive, super thick RG6 cables in there. So the super thin type of SDI cables are in my all of my equipment that goes between the convenience panel on the back and the equipment inside. So it doesn't become, it's still a massive, mess of cables in there, but they're take up a lot less room, and you can route them around the edges a lot easier if there's those little skinny cables.
Next question.
This one's from Tony Mobley in Newnan, Georgia, USA. Is there a mobile solution for Ethernet for a house of worship at a reasonable price?
Jason Bache is going to help you out here. Jason?
Yeah, I had to kind of burn my brain on this one because Ethernet is not mobile, and there is no substitute for Ethernet when it comes to cost or price. So if what you're after is there a Wi-Fi equivalent to Ethernet? No, there isn't. It doesn't exist. Your cheapest possible way to do this would be take Ethernet and install it wherever you need it, and even if you never use it again, it's still going to be the most cost-effective solution.
Next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle, USA asks, when a stage presenter insists on using their laptop for slides and demos, what is your weapon of choice? What is your weapon of choice to get a feed from the projector and the live stream with the audio, 1,000 people in the room?
Jesse Kester is going to start us out here. Jesse?
And the internal conversation is knowing that all this equipment is designed to work. It'll probably work. We play up the dangers involved in introducing new elements to the ecosystem, but in general, you'll get across the finish line.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, it depends on what the size of the event, or how important the event is. I know there's 1,000 people there. Typically, we would and the most basic thing that we have laying around is some kind of SDI to HDMI or HDMI to SDI converter. But what I would say is that if it matters, we'll typically have a Teranex involved. So we we'll run it to a Teranex. If one step down from that is a decimator, so putting it into a decimator. Decimator is a pretty good tool. You will have a little bit of latency. So if if they're playing a lot of stuff with audio and with someone actually talking, that is problematic, for what we do. We do the best we can to try to get them to, for a professional output, the way you do this is we have a computer in the back. They have a DSAN perfect queue, and they have a pickle, which we call it a little controller that they have, and they go through it. And occasionally we've shown people Apple, Google, Amazon events. See that thing in the hand? It looks exactly the same. In fact, I used to have a video of all these guys clicking on the same clicker because everybody uses the same piece of hardware. We said, if you want to play that game and have it really work and be smooth, we recommend what everybody else uses. We kind of did a little bit of a, do what everybody else is doing here. But if that doesn't work, typically we put a decimator into the podium and convert it to SDI, or the only other question is whether it needs to be converted to fiber. There are some Blackmagc tools that we haven't used that I probably would use. I haven't had to have somebody connected to a computer in the front of the room for a long time, except for me. But I would say that if I had it, it's been probably 6 or 7 years since we've done that. But if I did it, I'd probably look pretty hard at the presenter hardware that Blackmagc makes.
Alex, you want to discuss a little bit the
DSAN
pitfalls potential in getting audio out of a third party's laptop with nothing but a 3.5 millimeter.
Well, you wouldn't get audio out of there. We'd have them route it to. Typically, we'd have them route their audio to HDMI. We don't want them to put their headphone. We don't want to use that. We'll de-embed the HDMI will get converted to SDI, and then from there we'll de-embed it. We wouldn't want to use. We don't. It generally, unless I'm pushed into a horrible corner with a really large club, I will not allow unbalanced audio in my system anywhere for any reason. It is the source of all, so much buzz, problems. There's just so many things about it. And usually if I hear some little buzz going on in the back, I usually have some mixed pre's USB pre's. I usually have 2 or 3 of them in a box somewhere. And if I hear you making audio noise that isn't supposed to be made, I'll walk up and find out that you're using some kind of pod DI or some junk like that. And And I'll be like, hey, how about we use this and to have a real output? So I think that so we try to get rid of any kind of unbalanced audio at all times.
That's why I brought it up. When I've had this happen in the past, somebody brings their whole laptop, they set it down and say, no, I'm going to do my presentation off of this. And at home, that's what they were doing. They were plugging in a little 3.5 millimeter connector to get in their shop. And now they're suddenly in front of 1,000 people expecting that to work flawlessly. And there can be issues, as Alex just enumerated. Next question.
This is one of my questions. What's a good quality tool to build SDI cables?
Jason Bass is going to start us off. Jason?
Unless you're going to spend thousands of dollars, and don't get me wrong, I love the tool that Alex at one point found that is just over the top. But my emergency set is not one tool. I don't think you can do this with one tool for under several $1,000s. These are from Klein Tools, so you're going to need a stripper like this, and it looks like that, and you spin it around. The problem is it's never going to be clean, and boy, does it hurt to get those tiny little quad shield, the RG6Q, those tiny little splinters that are just the gift that keeps on giving. So the better these are, the cleaner that's going to be. But there's no way around the fact that it's a big pain to do this in the field. But yeah, my emergency kit is from Klein Tools.
Alex Lindsay.
I will admit, I'm embarrassed to say I don't know how to use the little finger thing. I never really came around. And the problem is that I got this one other tool that Jason has referred to very early on in my SDI termination life. At the beginning, like when I was working with Marty Brennis, who has been terminating tools forever, and Marty was like, "Oh, just use mine." And once I saw it, I was like, "Oh, this is great." And then someone handed me one of the little finger ones, and I was like, "What am I supposed to do with this?" like this is what kind of? So this is what I use is this. This is a Coastal Cable Tools stripper. Now, what will happen is you'll tell them what your cable is. Because I only use the cable that I talked about earlier. You tell them what it is. They will calibrate it for you at the factory. So when it shows up, you just plug it in, you push a button, and it strips everything exactly the way it just cuts everything exactly the way it should. You pull it off, and from there, it's there's lots of crimper tools. I mean, the crimping. They have some odd pneumatic crimping, and I wouldn't do that. But there's a variety of crimping tools that you can use there. I will say that the one thing that I do use is I have the one I use around here somewhere, but so this is I use these are little tweezers, but I unscrew one of the tweezers so that I have this, and the reason that this is a it's silicone or whatever, it's not metal. So
is that from iFixit? Looks
no,
like it.
This is just from Amazon. It costs $6 on Amazon, I think. These are just little, and so these because they're not metal, they're not going to damage anything, and you can use it to get up under things and pull things forward without hurting the shielding. And so usually I have one of these. Usually it's laying right here because when I make cables, I do it on this desk. But usually it's on one. I take one of these off so I can get in there and pull things out. It speeds things up a little bit. So anyway, that's how I build SDI cables. But I would love to say that I know how to do it in the old analog way, but I don't know how to do that.
Courtney Gooden?
Neutrik makes a very nice little kit. It's about $500 if you want to part with a lot of green. I have what we call the CAS BNCT, designed for crimping and stripping BNC cables of a variety of sizes, and mostly Neutrik, I think. So you could get that. It's a nice little kit with the crimper and the stripper and all that stuff in one little case. $500 though.
I think I still have my Radio Shack twisty cable stripper, and the whole thing was just two little blades, one of which was set back farther than the other one, so that when you clip that, you take a pair of dikes and cut the cable, then you put that an inch or so into it, spin it around, and the shorter blade cuts the outside shield. The longer blade gets down and cuts to the dielectric and exposes the little piece. I used to use those on RG6 video cables a lot. And so it's quick, but it's not clean. And you still have to go in usually if there's any kind of braided shield in there and get something small like a little pick tool. I used to have one on my Leatherman and get that out. Now that gets you to Jason's problem, which is these things can get the little frayed ends of those braided shields can get stuck in your fingers, and it's not pleasant. So it's a hassle, but welcome to the old way and the new way. Next question.
This one's from Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas. I'm thinking about buying an Apple TV. However, I've had a lot of issues with AirPlay failing in the past. Also, there may be a new one on the horizon soon. Would you buy or wait?
Alexander Knight, what's your solution?
I don't know what your entire network infrastructure is, but it has been well over a decade since I've had any AirPlay failures. And the only ones that I can think of were trying to AirPlay to a third-party product that was not built by Apple. I remember I had an old Pioneer AV receiver, which supported the early generation of AirPlay technology, and it was notoriously unreliable. But every single Apple TV box I've had, and I've had every single one they've made, I've had zero issues with it. I do realize that there is a new one on the horizon. We don't know exactly when that's going to be released. If you need one now, I would say just get one. There is no scenario at the moment with the current 4K Apple TV box where I felt that it was not doing something, or if it never feels slow. It has an over-engineered processor in there, and no regrets at all.
Jason Beish.
Yeah, plus one on what Alexander said. I buy these, but I have way too many. And again, Jeff, if you could afford it, just buy it and give it to a loved one when when it's upgraded. They're just not expensive enough to worry about it. Many of us spend as much or more on a way to put a case on our phone and then charge it in the car. So just think of it that way.
Alex Lindsay.
I don't know when they're going to. They used to release these at the same time they did the iPhone, but I think the iPhone became too important. And so there is a rumor that they are going to release another one somewhere in the near future, but no one knows when that'll happen. I use Apple TVs all over the place. So I use them in my gym. I use them in my living room. I use them in my office. I have one in my bag. I don't buy all four of them at a time. I buy each one of them. The newest one is in the home system. The second newest one is in the gym. The third newest one is in my backpack. The fourth newest one is in my office. It just goes back. They're just they all kind of and there's like a little bit of a shuffle. But what makes them so nice is that once you have your account all set up, you go into a new you open it up and boom, everything's there, all ready to go. And if it also depends on how dedicated you are to the Apple ecosystem. I do AirPlay occasionally when we want to show something or talk about something, but I also have been buying Apple TV shows and movies since they started being released, and so I have over 600 movies on Apple TV. So it's really easy for me to immediately be able to jump into content.
I'm sorry, I just had a window pop up in front of that. Is there some? Yes, Jason Beish is in line again.
Yeah, I wanted to say a few more words to put Jeff's mind at ease about AirPlay. AirPlay 2 wasn't just an also-ran, just an addition to AirPlay. It was complete re-engineering on the back end from a developer standpoint of AirPlay. If you haven't used it since AirPlay 2, it's basically not the same thing. So I think you'll be fine.
There you go. Hey, don't forget this show is run by your questions. If you'd like to get questions into the system, the best way is to get into our Makana system. That's our Q&A thing. Go to officehours.global/join. We'll send you an email. You follow a little breadcrumb. And the coolest thing about it is that there's a whole community that exists parallel to the show that discusses these questions while we're on. There's a lot more really useful information in those discussions almost every day. So dive into that if you'd like to. That's officehours.global/join. Next question.
Jesse Kester in Glendale asks, regarding the Hollyland Lyra, it's a larger sensor, but it's also 50 megapixels, which is pretty dense, which offers better low-light performance, larger pixels on the sensor, or more pixels that you then scale down in post.
Alex Lindsay, what's your thought?
Generally larger pixels. I do think to your point, Jesse, that I think that they're probably doing that so that they can do the pan and scan, and it also probably has to do with that's the chip they could buy. The company that has done the best in this area as far as low light performance, of course, is Canon. Canon has the ME20 and the ME200. The ME20 is a 1080p chip. It reduces errata. It not being totally accurate because it's got a bunch of photons hitting it as opposed to just a couple. So the main thing is that it ends up to be more accurate, and as you gain it up, and that's why the ISO on an ME20 I think is 4 million or 3.5 million, something like that, and the operational ISO in the ME200 is in like 100,000 or something like that. I think it goes up to 400,000 or 500,000. And so most people would love to have for their webcam and probably happily pay, enough people would happily pay $600 for that. If they didn't have to worry about lenses and it just did autofocus and it was a Super 35 sensor, I think it would be very, very popular.
Jesse Kester?
I would consider consumer under $1,000. I think the ZV-E10 is probably the best under $1,000 camera. That's what my wife uses, and I think that's probably the closest to that $1,000 mark with the highest. Like if you look at what I think Logitech put out $1,000, and the problem is it wasn't Super 35, and so why would I do that? Why would I not get a ZV-E10 even used over a Logitech that is not going to look as good? So I think that's the challenge.
Next question.
Next question's coming in from me. Has anyone heard if the Blackmagc ATEM Mini Extreme ISO G2 is shipping soon? I noticed a recent October 30 ATEM Switcher.
Drop you an email as soon as they got it in stock. $21.95. You can pre-order it there. And I don't know, maybe if you pre-order it now, I don't know who's absorbing the new tariff on things from Australia, because there's a 10% tariff on everything coming in. Maybe B&H will eat that. I don't know. Maybe they'll pass it along. So it may be a bit more expensive than it was in the past. So beware of that. But apparently it is not shipping yet because they don't have it in stock yet.
Jason Beisch?
I can answer that because the very next day, or when the tariffs were through, they sent me these fans. Let me see. Let me scroll a little bit further through. There we go. And they are actually mounted with nothing more than a really clever 3M custom cut sticker. And as long as you line them up, and put new fans on, I have a feeling. I have a feeling that I'm no longer worried about my ATEM Mini dying, because it is now silent again and cost $50 and a little bit of time with Blackmagc support to get the part. But yeah, it was great.
Nice hack. Well done. Alex, your thoughts?
I think it's a new product design, and usually that takes them a little bit longer to put it out. I know that I feel very certain that it will be released before April 8th of 2026, because that's just before NAB. Oh no, NAB may be moving earlier. Whatever the week is of NAB, the week before that is when you'll get it done by the next spring. Then they went through a period of time when they never announced anything that they hadn't released. They've that ship again. So they're back to kind of aspirational releases.
Hey, I spoke of questions into the show earlier. If you want a quicker way, there is askofficehours.global. That is something you can type into a web browser or anything like that into your phone, and it'll get you into a even quicker queue. That's askofficehours.global. Put your questions in there, send them to us. We'll look at them really quickly. And those questions that come in through the queue, through askofficehours.global, will persist for a couple of days. So
school logos and making them 3D rotatable videos for a hologram for rotation. Any easy or cheap solutions or best AI video generator to use?
You're saying AI wants to do it its way and not your way? I'm shocked. Alex, what's your solution?
I think that you may find that Runway could possibly do what you're trying to do there. So you may want to try that with Runway as far as the return. But to do something basic, the question is, how much dimension do you want? So you could take something into something as simple as Apple's Motion or After Effects, put it on. There's lots of little relatively inexpensive font tools. That'll treat them like letters, and then you can pop them in, extrude them. The reason that you sometimes might want to do that is because the rest of what Motion does with 3D is the only part that doesn't. Extrusion of EPS files is the only thing that doesn't really work. And also you have to know, like, are your school logos in an EPS format, or are they PNGs or JPEGs or whatever? So if they're already 2D, then you're just going to be on a 2D plane unless you really want to do a lot of work. If they're 3D, if they're EPSs, you can extrude those. Of course, there's other tools like Blender and Cinema 4D that will, of course, let you do all kinds of things, but it's going to be a lot more work. It's not going to be an easy path.
Jesse Kester.
To doing that extrude on things other than fonts, just flip the switch.
And there's so
The style or the format. I don't think it'll generate 3D model of it, but then you can bring that, once you 3Dize it, increase, make it look like a 3D logo. Then I think you can bring it into Rodent AI and Blender, and then create a 3D model of it that way, and then spin it around in your favorite animation software, 3D animation software.
Courtney, I actually just think you like saying nano banana. I don't know why, but it seems like fun.
Nano banana. No, it's a Flash 2.5 model. Okay, there we go.
Next question.
This question comes in from Aaron Cody in St. Louis, Missouri. Any product recommendations for embedding and de-embedding audio?
Of course, you can use something like an FS, the FS2s. You might even find a used FS2 or FS4s or FS HDRs. That's what we use a lot for this kind of thing. But there are throwdown boxes. And so AJA makes a throwdown box that will do some, I think, a 6G version from Blackmagc, which is less expensive. So those are things to look at as far as, you can stack those up. Also look at the open gear. So when you want to do a search for open gear de-embedding. So Blackmagc makes a series of cards that you can put in. You can get one rack, and you just put these open gears in, and you can have a whole bunch of de-embedders built into that. Do them all at the same time. If you're not doing them all at the same time, it's less worrisome. But if you're trying to get another company, I want to say Entech, but I don't think it's Entech, that'll do it for like $1,500. And so that'll both embed or de-embed from SDI via Dante, which is very convenient.
Next question.
This one comes in from Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois. Any third-party Mac?
Consider what kind of lighting. Now, maybe you're on the road, and that's because you're in different hotel rooms and everything else. But if you're not able to get more exposure control over that, I would consider thinking about the lighting that you're using there to see if you can't either. There's two different things. If you're in a lot of different places, it's enough overwhelming light that basically makes the other exposures less important. It's making sure that you don't have, and I tend to go to 56K for everything because Windows are 56K. But you need to, I think it's the lights that if you're really having that much trouble with exposure on an Insta360 Link, which has a fair amount of control, the problem is if you start to do adjustments to that, you may end up just stripping, pushing it's a webcam's video. It's not like it's 10-bit 422 color. So if you start pushing it further than that, you're going to have problems. If you absolutely want to do this, there's proc amps inside of Mimo Live. There's proc amps inside of OBS. Those are all things that you could stretch that, but you may find that you'll see posterization in gradients and other things because there's not enough signal there to move it.
Jason Bache.
Yeah, we all get stuck into Teams calls for one reason or another. I can tell you that there is, in the most recent version, a way to turn off auto exposure.
Can throw
trying to, make everything, rise it up to neutral gray, which was driving
everything off. So you think everything's perfect. You add one more thing to it. Now you have to go back to square one and rebalance all the lights to get the picture that you want out of it. Lighting is a delicate skill to get just right. Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia, USA. Alex, any improvement in Keynote with iOS 26.1?
Alex?
Nothing new that I know of. So unless you know something that I don't, there's nothing that I have seen that is new. The last release was 7 months ago, and it let you have better copy and paste with freeform, some shortcut stuff for exporting, and some, Apple Intelligence stuff that I didn't care about.
Yeah. Jason Bache, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, there's nothing new in the most recent version, but I'm every time somebody says Keynote, I'm going to bring this up yet again. They have USDZ support, and if you get the noun,
Alex,
I think, but this is just magic.
Yeah, for people who do
VG to custom shapes inside of Keynote. There's a process to that. I'm not set up for it to do it at the end of this hour.
I'll do it.
But there's a process to converting the SVGs, which is not obvious. You can't just say convert to shape. You have to ununite them and ununite them and then reunite them and then put them back together. And once you know how to do that, as Jason said, Jason got me hooked on the Noun project. I use the Noun project almost every day, as I do presentations. But I like to take the ones I use often and make them into my own custom shapes so that I can always add them to my presentations quickly and easily. And they also take on all the shape rules related to color and everything else.
Jesse, you wanted to get in on this?
Yeah, anyone who's intimidated.
Soft tips, I suppose, if there is some sort of sound quality to be gained, it is the fact that they have completely re-engineered the tips. They have added more tips so that it will fit in your ear hole better. But all in, I think it's really just a very slight engineering tweak. I would not spend what they cost if you're just worried about FOMO, if you have the ones before.
Alex Lindsay.
I tried to put it off, but I didn't. About a week ago, I went ahead and I was like, I don't need these anymore. I'm not going to use them. But to listen to music, they are, in my opinion, the best small ones that you can put in your ears. And I just find that the resolution, the main thing is the ice in this I still have it now when I'm on them. I'm constantly pushing them in as kind of like this weird twitch.
It's a habit now, right?
That I'm just constantly. I'll be sitting there thinking and just pushing them back into my ears. I still push them in a little bit, but I don't push them in nearly. It's not nearly as problematic as my last set, which is why I gave them to my wife. I was like, I'm not using these anymore. The pairing on.
There are a few ways you can do that. You can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That doesn't cost you anything. It's real simple. You can volunteer if you want to join the crew here who puts this show on. We're always looking for more people on the show.
This one's from Jesse Kester in Glendale here on the panel. One of my favorite features on the ATEM ISO is that it auto-generates resolved projects as you edit. I'm interested in the constellation, but don't want to lose that ingredient in our pipeline. Any solutions you'd suggest?
Alex, what do you think?
I don't have one yet. I will say that we've had a couple people talk to us about that. Because I don't use that tool very much, I'm not as sensitive to it. Because I want all the other tools that I have in a Constellation 8K, which is one of the other advantages. When you hit record, it starts all the cameras, and so you theoretically are getting a 6K raw file that will line up with your. Because to me, the H.264 records are kind of worthless. So being able
those H.264s, I think of them as like scratch tracks, not for anything except reference. What are some of the features of the Constellation that you find hard to unwind from your pipeline? Because the ISO, that Resolve project, is really hard to pull out once you're used to it and once it's embedded in your pipeline. But sell me a Constellation.
Show that we volunteered to do on Sunday, and for Veterans Day Sunday. And we very quickly decided that wasn't going to be enough for what we were doing. So those are if I was doing a show that I know that I'm not going over 6 inputs, or definitely not more than 8 inputs, I think that I could be tempted. And I have done shows with the ISO. I've done smaller, like 4 or 5 camera shoots that don't require a lot of playback and all the other things that I would normally do for a show. But again, I think the panel also makes a big difference. Is whether it's a 1ME or a 2ME panel. I've used 4ME panels. I find the 4ME a lot unless we're doing a really complicated show. But the 1ME and 2ME panels put a lot more things at your fingertips so that you can react quickly and do more complex shows.
Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia, USA is back. I am a little frustrated with using my MacBook M1 as a recorder for a house of worship.
Mini, I think, which is 12G HDR, and it'll record ProRes 422 10-bit or DNX format ready for editing if you're going to load them into Final Cut Pro. You can have it record MOV files, or you can have it record to an external Samsung disk or the internal SD card. It's not that expensive.
Alex?
Yeah. I think that something simple like that, it just depends on what you're trying to record. Is it just video? Is it video and audio, or audio? So let us know. But I think that the M1 could be a little bit overdone. I think Courtney's solution could work well.